My name is Cameron, and this is another video about some of the important information about music that informed announcers need to get their shows together. Today's topic, Canadian content. Most Canadian broadcast media, whether television or radio, has a Canadian content rule. It's different for different sectors. So what does that mean specifically for where we are, community radio? Basically, as a community radio broadcaster, we, and of course I mean all of us that volunteer in community radio, you guys and ladies and peoples out there, me right here, all of us, are mandated to support Canadian musicians of all sorts, including but not exclusively new and emerging Canadian talent. To help ensure that, the CRTC, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, established a requirement that we must play a certain amount of Canadian content every broadcast week. We're required to play 35% Category 2, 12% Category 3, and 7% for third languages. That's something besides English, French, or a First Nations language. Now, a few important things. First up, what's a broadcast week? All that means is that we, as music programmers and community radio people, have to play a certain amount, those designated amounts, of Canadian music between 6 a.m. and midnight, 7 days a week, from Sunday morning to Saturday night. The other big thing to remember about CRTC codes is that Canadian content is not based on the show, the day, the album, or even by minutes of music played, but by the individual music selection. What that means when you're doing a show, for instance, is that out of 14 songs, 5 or 6 of them really should be Canadian, unless you're doing a jazz or a blues show. Sometimes it's pretty easy to know. A Canadian citizen or permanent resident who is also a musician would count as Canadian. But did you know that a person who has lived in Canada for at least 6 months immediately before they created a piece of music also counts as a Canadian artist? But what if the case is more complicated than that? Well, the CRTC created a useful system called MAPL, M-A-P-L, to figure out what it takes to be a Canadian composition. The MAPL pie breaks up music into 4 requirements that are: music, the music is composed by a Canadian; artist, the music or the lyrics are performed by a Canadian; performance, where was it recorded or performed; or lyrics, the lyrics are written entirely by a Canadian. So some CDs in your music library at your station might have this symbol. It's very, very useful. Sometimes you'll have a music team that figure this out for the volunteers to help them along their way, but not always. Sometimes it will be up to you, yes you, the radio host, to find out the truth. One of the most important things to remember about the maple pie is that you only need 2 of the 4 slices to count as Canadian. Doubly important, any song recorded before 1972 only needs 1 of the 4 pie pieces to count as Canadian. Where some of the members aren't technically Canadian, 50% of the requirement must come from a Canadian artist to count as one of the 4 maple pies. Of course, with Arcade Fire, even the American members live and record in Montreal, so I guess that's actually a bad example because they would fulfill the requirement earlier of having a residency of 6 months in Canada. Neil Young and his American band Crazy Horse are probably a better example. Neil Young is a Canadian citizen who only resides in Canada occasionally and plays in an American band, but as long as he writes the lyrics and the songs, it counts as Canadian because Neil Young is a Canadian citizen. One last word before I finish this up. Some people don't like Canadian content rules, and that can be understandable. Sometimes it can be pretty hard to find enough Canadian music in the right style or genre to fit your music show. I mean, it can be pretty hard to fill up a progressive rock show without playing a lot of Rush. But community radio fundamentally is all about community, and music is no exception. We're doing radio because we love and want to support the musicians from our towns, our province, our country, because they are friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, and our fellows. Canadian content is not a burden, but an exciting, challenging, and interesting part of any music show at a community radio station. I hope this video leaves you as passionate about Canadian content as I am.